Well, I was introduced to geographic profiling back in 1996. I was a investigator in Burnaby, British Columbia, and I was the lead on a series of arson fires to occupied homes. The offender was going into carports and setting combustibles on fire in the middle of the night. And it is truly, by the grace of God, that nobody was killed in this series. It was a very um, he was a very prolific arsonist, and it caused a lot of people a lot of stress. Um, I was at my wit's end. I didn't know how to proceed anymore because we had done all the usual suspects. We had a task force on the go, and we had not identified anyone responsible for these fires. So what I did is I turned to here to Ottawa to behavioral sciences, where Ron McKay, who's now retired, but he was a criminal profiler, he prepared a profile for me, and he suggested I call Kim Rossmill in Vancouver to do a geographic profile. I remember thinking to myself, what the heck is a geographic profile? I had no idea. When I called Kim, he came out and he did a geographic profile for me. And he broke it down from a hunting area of approximately 30 square kilometers to 1.5 square kilometers. And Kim said, if you start your search in this area, you will find your offender. So I started going to these community consultative group meetings. The residents in Burnaby were up in arms. They were really upset. Why weren't we catching this guy? The first meeting I went to, I brought Ron's profile, I brought Kim's maps, and I started speaking to the people saying, this is what I believe the type of person I'm looking for. And I read off Ron's report. You're looking for a white male between the ages of 25 to 35, and on it went. And then I said, I believe he lives in this area right here, in this small 1.5 square kilometer area. A woman at the back of the room put her hand up and said, there's a guy like that who lives in my apartment building. I remember thinking to myself, yeah, okay. I didn't really think much of it, but after the meeting was done, I went and talked to this woman. She gave me the name of the person that matched the description. When I did some checking, I found out he's living under an assumed name. And when I finally identified him, I ran him through the Canadian police database, and he had a criminal record for arson in Alberta and up in the territories. I was pretty interested now. I started surveillance on this fella. In the end, he was my guy. He confessed to the fires. In 80% of the cases, humans are predictable, especially when it comes to geography. And the number one thing that I look at in geography is the nearness principle, or more importantly, all humans are inherently lazy. We only go as far as we have to do the task that we're required to do, be that get a quart of milk, or be that to steal something or commit a sexual assault. We are lazy. And that is one of the premises of this algorithm. It's called least effort principle, or the nearness principle. And so, yeah, look at your favorite coffee shop drive-through. It's packed with people waiting to get their coffee in the morning. Yet you can walk in, go to the cashier, park, walk in, get your coffee, walk out, and drive away, and that drive-through line is barely moved. Why? We're all lazy. That applies in most cases, and it applies for offenders as well in most cases. The software I use is called Rigel, and it was developed by Dr. Kim Rossmill, who is a former Vancouver City policeman, and his thesis when he received his PhD in criminology was on geographic profiling. So what he did was he came up with an algorithm that is the standard for geographic profiling as I use it today. So this particular example you'll see here, the red dots on this screen represent robberies to insurance companies that occurred over a span of several months in Vancouver. So you see these red dots, and my job as an analyst, I'll go in there, and it's not just as simple as plugging the coordinates into the computer. I actually have to decide which geographic components are pertinent to the mathematical analysis. So what we do is we don't typically use every crime scene. We'll break it down to the ones that we believe are pertinent, and there's a lot of mathematical and geographic reasons why we do that. So in this particular case, we reduce it to, I'm not sure how many crimes there are yet, but I'll tell you in a second as soon as I do the analysis. So when the computer actually does this calculation, as you see here now, we have what we call the geographic profile, where the darker colors represent lower probability, the lighter colors represent higher probability, and the red spot here, what we call the hot spot, is the highest probability area in which to search for the unknown offender. Now, whenever we do analysis, we end up with statistics. So here's what I was talking about earlier. There are 32 crimes in this series, but only 24 were used in the analysis. The hunting area was calculated to be 66 square kilometers. So 66 square kilometers is the hunting area. That is the area that contains all the crimes. The software suggests that 70% of the time you will find the offender in the top 1.5% of the total hunting area. So that is 1.5% of 66 square kilometers. In this case, you should find the offender in the top 0.98 square kilometers. So then what I do is I go back in and I recalculate it using just 0.98 square kilometers. And now you have this area here is the prediction where you should find the offender. And in this particular case, there were several suspects that the Vancouver police were looking at, and when I throw them up on the map, there were two way out here. They weren't involved, but there was actually these two gentlemen were working in conjunction, and they fell right into peak profile. One of Kim Rossimo's suggestions was when a robbery occurs, instead of sending all your units to the crime scene, why not send them in this area here and see if you can catch them coming home? And that's the way they caught. I had a computer science professor once who told me that computers are very stupid. And I buy into that. You know, Rigel does the same thing every time. It does the calculations, it does the math, it does what would take me days in less than a second. But it is the interpretation of the data once it's done that is where I come in. Geographic profiling is not the end-all be-all. You'll never get a geographic profiler to tell you that it is. It is a tool, like fingerprints, like DNA, like polygraph. And that's all it is. It is a tool. Is it effective in every case? Absolutely not. Just like DNA is not effective in every case. It is just something else that investigators can turn to, and if it's suitable, and that's my job, if the series is suitable for geographic profiling, I will try.